You always start at the same place. We're using the flow system. We're starting at the right wingtip every time. So this thing has winglets. These winglets are held in by screws, so we want to make sure all these screws are positioned right. They all run in the direction the wind travels over the wing. There's one more screw down here too. Then I'm going to the first, this is the outer Sprog on this one. We're checking all the hardware. There's some safety clips in here. I want to make sure they're on. Nothing looks damaged or bent or stained or anything like that. And this is the cross tube leading edge junction. So I'm checking all the hardware in here, looking for any kind of stains on the aluminum, you know, stress marks. If you can't see the end of the bolt, you feel the tip of the bolt coming through the nut. There's another one back here that you can feel coming through the nut. Everything looks good there. Run your hands down these cables. If you poke yourself, then you got a cable untwining. Get to this point, we check these knuckles, make sure there's no cracks. We're checking this hardware, we're checking this cabling visually, and then we're visually checking the top hardware on this down tube. Make sure everything up there is in place. Then we're going to unwind this trim. Bring this down like this, and then go up this little step stool to check the nose hardware. This will be a lot easier on your racer because it's a lot lower there. So I got the nose plates here. We're checking the nose battens are in position. Nose plates aren't twisted or cracked or anything. You got your nose hardware coming through here. You also have hardware going up through here that you can feel on top. You can feel the bolts coming through on top of this keel tube up here. And you check your swan catch hardware. Put those back in place. Got to do that for the test. Now we're checking this hardware. Any cracks on these knuckles, these cables. It's this down tube all the way to the top. Make sure all those bolts are in position. And we're running our hands on these cables. Checking the cross tube leading edge junction again. Feel the bolt coming through that side. Feel these bolts. Feel that bolt. Everything looks good. Nothing stressed or bending. Checking this Sprog. This acts sort of like a tip strut or a washout strut, but it's inside the wing here. Got to be checked. Then we're checking the screws on the winglets. They're all in the right position. We're checking the top surface of the wing here. No frost, no crap on the top. Wings are dry. And we check the trailing edges of all the battens. You can't touch them, then do a visual on each individual one to make sure they're all in position. None of the clips have come unclipped.
Mike, this one's, is it straight? Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Pardon me?
That's okay. No, I thought that was out, but it's in. That little thing.
Oh, it's normal.
Yeah.
And we're also looking at the upper cabling from here. You can get a much better view. You don't see any kind of untwining or anything twisted or loose. So that's all normal. So the wing checks out. So we float around the whole wing. Now we're going to flow around the trike starting at the prop. So on a 912, we're checking the prop, the gearbox, and the oil all at the same time. So I open up the oil, check Check each blade of the prop, looking for any kind of nicks or cracks. At the same time, I'm burping the oil, and I'm feeling for the gearbox, any kind of unusual noise or play. You can have a little play this way, but you shouldn't have any play like that. And then pull out the dipstick. We just did an oil change on this yesterday, so it's real clean. And it's full. Make sure you get that cap on tight. Also, while we're on this side, we're checking all the hoses. Because these fuel lines are what give you trouble more often than anything. Especially where there's tight radiuses, they'll start to crack on you over time. So you always want to check the fuel lines. We're also checking our exhaust. You don't want to, especially on 2 strokes, you don't want to fly with a crack in the exhaust. 4 strokes either, but 2 stroke it'll stop the engine. Checking our oil lines. Check our plugs, make sure they're all tight. Carburetor throat. Jiggle this a little, make sure there's no play on that carburetor. And then we're moving around down into the landing gear. You don't put a lot of pressure on these, but you want to make sure there's no play. And we're also checking the bolts on the gears where you can feel the bolt coming through the nut on all this stuff. Drag strut, axle strut, shock strut. This is our choke. Check the choke cables, make sure they're okay. Make sure this little bolt isn't coming undone. There's our brake apparatus down here. There's our dual steering, make sure that's solid. Our brake master cylinder fork. Make sure that tire's hard. Then we go around this side to the gas pedal. Check for any untwining on the throttle cable in there. Check this throttle cable. And also check the movement on the carburetors when you flip this throttle back and forth. You can see the carbs go through the full cycle. I'm going to unlock this BRS because I'm going to be in the back seat. And I'm looking at the gas tank. We got over 50 liters, so it's good for over 5 hours. Okay, I'm checking the hardware on this. Drag strut. Shock strut. Axle strut. Wheel pant. BRS caps are tight. We check the exhaust really closely on this side because you got all these springs and these safety wires holding the springs. Make sure none of those are broken. Plugs are tight. Carburetor's tight. This engine cover's tight. And then we're checking the oil filter. There's a witness mark, so we make sure that's lined up. Looking at the radiators, make sure you don't see any dripping, or I always like feeling the bottom, make sure they're dry. And now we go for the big 8. So the big 8, number 1 is this bolt. And while I'm in there, I take another look at my fuel filter, which is way in there. You want to make sure you don't see a lot of garbage in there. Number 2 is this over center locker. 3, 4, and 5 are those 3 wing nuts with the pins through them. 6 and 7 are these pit pins. And 8 is where this tube connects to the frame of the trike, which is right down here. There's a bolt and a nut, so you just want to feel that. Make sure everything feels right there. So everything checks out. Good to go.